Hello and welcome along to WD18, the Watford fan channel, brought to you in partnership with Hertfordshire Mind. It's the big one, Luton versus Watford at Kenilworth Road this Saturday, 12:30 kickoff, and this is your tactical preview on how both teams will set up for the big one. Charlie Zazzera joining myself, Jacob Culshaw. Charlie, how are you?
I'm good. It's a derby week, so try not to think about it too much. I know Lewis has sent a couple of tweets already, so yeah, looking forward to this one.
Two guests on the show today. We're treating you with the opposition perspective. First off, with Luton fan and YouTuber Lewis Williams. Make sure you do check out Lewis's channel in the description below to get the other point of view heading into this one. Lewis, really do appreciate your time on this podcast, mate, and jumping on and giving your perspective. How are you?
Could be better. Like I said to you guys just before we started, yeah, if we win on Saturday, I'd be, of course, over the moon. But yeah, nervous as hell.
Has it already started? What did it start yesterday? Or was it just jumping on this pod? You were like, I'm nervous for the pod and I'm nervous for the game on Saturday.
Oh no, it started weeks ago when we started losing games of football. Yeah, I knew this game was coming. It came around quite quickly, so I was like, no, it's coming, and now it's here.
We're also delighted to be joined by a voice you'll recognise for sure. BBC Three Counties radio sports editor Geoff Doyle joining us to give us the neutral perspective on things come Kenilworth Road at 12:30 on Saturday. Geoff, you've seen a lot of these games over the years. You've seen a lot of these games working for BBC. If you could describe this derby in one word, what would it be?
Uncallable.
How are you feeling about this one, Geoff? Does it feel different to previous ones?
It does, yeah, because it's really strange. Normally, you'd have a clear favourite, whereas this one, I honestly I cannot call it. It's so difficult. Having watched both teams so often this season, I mean, Luton are a shadow of what they have been in the last couple of years. And Watford have been really good at times this season, but away from home, the last couple of performances away from home, they've been as open as Luton have been. I mean, there are parallels there between both clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get all into that one as we go on the podcast. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to WD18, comment down below your thoughts, your predictions for this one. As Geoff said, it's a hard one to call, but let us know your predictions in the comment section below. Charlie, I'll let you do the honours on our announcement on the podcast. Just a bit of housekeeping before we get things under the way. The Mad Squirrel are back, and we're going to be back there on Saturday.
We are back on Saturday. Delighted to get another partnership with the Mad Squirrel. If people don't know, really great pub just down the road from Watford, 7 minutes from Vicarage Road. They do some amazing beers. You'll often see us in their amazing Watford mural on the wall, and we're going to be there after the game on Saturday doing a post-match pint. You guys would have seen those videos we do live from the bar. So hopefully we're going to be celebrating instead of drowning our sorrows. But looking forward to working with those guys again. We've got some really good content ideas. So great to be back on board with the Mad Squirrel.
We'll be there regardless come Saturday for our post-match pint. So if you do fancy coming along for a beer or two, come and say hello, come and join us and chat about the game because it is a big one. And those who can't make the trip up to the M1, by the way, can watch the game on Sky Sports Plus. It is on Sky Sports, but we'll be at Kenilworth Road come Saturday. Lewis, I wanted to get the Luton perspective first of all on this one, and actually just Luton's season so far and your current thoughts on Rob Edwards. Lewis, I know you did a video on this and your perspective, but it's 3 games without a win for Luton. Obviously, the last result was a 2-0 defeat against Sheffield United. Just 2 league wins so far this season. What is your overall assessment, I guess, of the start you've made to the season?
Yeah, very unexpected start, I have to say. I don't think any Luton fan would have predicted this start to the season, especially with the run of fixtures which we had. I thought the fixtures were quite kind to us. At the moment, they're not kind. They're against teams that are all in the top half of the Championship, so it's quite worrying at the moment. But yeah, at this moment in time, I think going into the season, it didn't feel right at Luton. It felt we were going into it unprepared. Recruitment was quite slow. Not much communication from the club in terms of certain things. And I think a lot of fans were like, this is a bit weird. This isn't like Luton. And I think right now, with the style of football which we're playing, I think we're caught in between playing 2 styles. This new style which Edwards is trying to install into these group of players, and the old style, which was very successful in winning promotion out of the Championship. And right now, it feels like the group can't do this new style. So we need to resort back to the old style, go back to basics, and go back to doing what Luton were quite good at, which was being aggressive, winning your battles, playing for the badge, that fighting spirit. And I just feel like we haven't really seen that, apart from in the game against Millwall, and then when we went down to 10 men against Portsmouth.
Because, Geoff, in your post-match at Bramall Lane, you mentioned that you felt that Rob Edwards was searching for his team. He made quite a lot of changes for that one. Where do you see Luton at this moment in time under Rob Edwards?
Well, there's no doubt about it. They are struggling, and I agree. I think what happened last season was in the Premier League, they started out cautiously and defensively because they had to, because they thought that was the only way they could do it. And then, and Rob has spoken about this, around about Christmas time, I think he just thought, actually, let's be a bit more progressive. Let's open up a little bit. Let's play 3 centre halves and almost go man for man in defence and open up and then see if we can score some goals. It was likely they were going to lose, but they decided they'd go for it. And that's what gave them, lots of credit, and lots of opposition fans were quite, charitable on how Luton had played. And I just think that Rob is now thinking, or has thought across the summer, right, that was in the Premier League against top class opponents. We're going to play that way in the Championship against teams that aren't as good, and we should be able to get away with it. And I think that has come to bite him on the behind, because I think even at Championship level, when you go 1v1 in defence against some of these top sides in the Championship, you are going to get caught out and exposed. And I think the difference is, when you do it in the Premier League, you probably concede 5 out of maybe 7 chances. In the Championship, you might concede 3 out of whatever it is, out of 7, whatever it is. You might not concede as many, but you're still going to concede because you're still playing against good teams. And I just think he might have to reconsider, because at the moment, it's clearly not working.
Lewis, where do you stand on the Rob Edwards debate? Because it was a lot of, just from the outside anyway, obviously he was briefly at Watford for a period of 7 or 8 games.
Jacob, why have you mentioned that?
You know what? Charlie's only just about got over that, by the way. It took him about a year to process it. I said at the time we did the first interview when he joins Watford here on WD18, the first video interview, and to be honest, the first thing I thought was the bloke smell was unbelievable. But number 2, he spoke really, really well, and it was a shame. I think the idea of Rob Edwards, Charlie, right, for a lot of Watford fans was maybe, well, it didn't turn out the way we wanted to, but we were pretty upset by how that finished during his time at Watford. Before we get Lewis's perspective on the current situation.
Yeah, I didn't really talk about this. I'm sure Lewis has got a little grin on his face, but I think we all really liked Rob in terms of how personable he was. He had a bit of a connection with Graham Taylor, having played under him. But yeah, we know what the Pozzos are like, and made that decision. And obviously he went on to do whatever he did. So now it's just really interesting to hear some of the noises coming from them lot down the road. But I'll pass this on to Lewis. Are you turning on your manager?
So for me personally, and if you've seen my latest couple of videos, I have decided that I do think it's a time for a change, but that's on the basis of I don't believe he can change it. I do want him to change it, and if he sorts it out, fantastic. I'm back in with Rob Edwards in. Have a great, successful career at Luton. But right now, I just don't think he can change it. And what worries me is the last game against Sheffield United, we played 4 or 5 players out of position. Normally, when a manager does that, that looks like they've run out of ideas. So it's whether or not he can accept, right, what I want to do this year just can't happen. Result back to what won us promotion to the out of the Championship. Go back to basics and see what happens playing that way. But I feel like the damage is already done. And if we were to go 1-0 down on Saturday, you're going to hear how toxic Luton is, because it's not been a good place at the moment, especially when the amount of goals we're conceding, just the lack of fight from certain players, playing the same underperforming players. He hasn't been helped with injuries, of course, but you can't keep blaming the injuries.
So, Geoff, is it fair to say this game? Well, firstly, I think the international break, from what I'm gathering from Lewis, came at the right time in terms of the run that Luton were on and the football they were playing. But has this fixture come at the right time for Rob Edwards and Luton, do you think?
Well, it might help because I think a lot of supporters are saying, right, our season begins now, because it hasn't got off at all yet. And I think just about the majority of Luton fans are saying, right, if we can begin the season with a victory against Watford at the Kenny, then our season begins now. So, yes, it could be a good time to play them. And if we look at the last 4 games where the two sides have come up against each other, the home team has won all 4 of those games. And at times where, I think about the one at Vicarage Road was when Watford weren't in great form, actually. And Luton, I think, probably went there thinking they would win it, and Watford won 4-0. So you have that kind of localness and the derby, which does strange things. So I think it comes at a good time. The break has helped. I mean, maybe not so much the players, because lots of them have been away on international duty, and so they probably need them all back again so that they can sort out what's going on. I think more so for the supporters, again, just to calm down and settle down a bit, because that last game at Sheffield United, as Lewis was saying, the way he set up the side, I don't quite know what he was trying to do. You know, I think most people thought he had to go with the back 4 because the back 3 wasn't working. But okay, go with the back 4. But then he made these kind of really bizarre decisions to play people in completely different positions. We saw a little bit of that when he was a Watford manager. I think remember when Kamara played on the right-hand side in defence? Yeah. And it was like, yeah, and it wasn't one change, it wasn't 2, it wasn't 3, it was like 5 or 6 players playing completely out of position. And I just felt watching it as though the players really weren't sure what they were doing. And that is a big concern for me.
So we go from Luton, Charlie, a team that, as Lewis has mentioned, the vibes aren't too good right now at Kenilworth Road, and probably does emphasise the importance of that first goal. If Watford get it and just maybe silence Kenilworth Road, it could really set the tone. But you flip it the other way around, Luton come out the blocks quickly. That then sets the tone for Watford, who are going to have the backs up against the wall away from home. But Watford are 6th in the league, 9 games, 5 wins, 1 draw and 3 defeats in the league. 6th place under Tom Cleverley so far. Tom stressed the importance of that win against Middlesbrough just on the verge of the international break. We had a game just on the verge of the international break against Sheffield United in the first one, and we had a defeat, and you spend the next 2 weeks thinking about it. And it kind of didn't kill the good mood, but certainly that great start had a little bit of an asterisk next to it because we couldn't finish it with a perfect start or an unbeaten start anyway. We've gone into this one with a win, Charlie. Just your assessment so far when you compare Luton start of the season to Watford start of the season. Where do you find yourself as a Watford fan under Tom Cleverley so far at the start of the season?
Yeah, I've said it many times on this channel, but pleasantly surprised about what he's getting out of this team. I think if you compare the mood between Watford fans and Luton fans going into the season, it would have been very different about both of our expectations. Some well-known podcasters had us bottom, and I think Clevs has instilled an identity into the players. They've all bought into him, it's clear to see. And at home, we've turned around that form, which is really important because in the last 2 or 3 seasons, apart from playing Luton, we've been awful at home. But yeah, we've got the home form sorted, but now we just need to go away and kind of replicate that. And I've really enjoyed it. I feel like we've got a good group of players. We've got some exciting players. I know we're going to talk into the potential lineups, but yeah, I'm looking forward to Saturday. But I just want to see us go in and do what we've been doing, not be worried about the crowd or outside environment, and get that win at Kenilworth Road, which has been 18 years, 2006 has it been? So you probably weren't even born, Jacob. So
I think it was, do you know what? That would have been 05, 06, wasn't it? So my first is 06, 07, which I'm not trying to make you lads feel old. Geoff, I wanted to get your assessment on Watford so far this season. You've seen both teams play. As Charlie mentioned in the pre-season, it was a bit doom and gloom. We did a couple of videos on this channel where we were a bit, and yes, it is only 9 games into the season, but we're a bit anxious about the recruitment. We're a bit anxious about, we've seen this summer before. But it does feel like Tom Cleverley is the glue keeping this all together at Watford. So what has been your assessment of Watford so far?
Yeah, really impressed with Tom Cleverley as a coach. He's really straight talking, and as a player, they must really like that. He's really honest, and I'm not just saying that just because that's good for us, but someone with that honesty, that's going to be appreciated by the players. I just think that that Watford made some really cute signings. The two were standouts, Sissoko and Ogbonna. I know Ogbonna hasn't played much, but he is going to be huge for Watford in that central defensive area. And Sissoko as well. They've got to keep those two fit. They are absolutely essential to Watford, those two. And then you've seen players come on. And what I've liked about Tom is that so many of his players have got so much better in this short space of time. Pollock has been a revelation at centre half. I mean, he's now second choice without a shadow of a doubt, and he's a permanent defender in that Watford team. Deli Bashir is a different player. Chatford-Adza for me is one of the best players in the Championship. I mean, every time I watch him, he makes a difference. He's one of those players, and Watford have been blessed with these type of players in the past. João Pedro, I absolutely adored. What I like about Chatford-Adza is he is always in a game. He always makes things happen. He's brilliant on the ball. He's technically brilliant, but he's always involved. Sarr in the past, we all knew he was a great player, but sometimes you wouldn't see him. Chatford-Adza gets on the ball and does stuff, and I just love that. And then there are so many others that have just improved. Bar's come along and made a huge difference. It's going to be fascinating to see how he uses him on Saturday, and so many others have improved too. So yeah, I mean, listen, probably what I'm saying about Tom Cleverley is what I've said about Rob Edwards in the past at Luton, where he came in at Luton and carried on the baton, if you like, after Nathan Jones had left. It just so happens that Cleverley's still kind of in that little heyday phase where everything is going pretty well, apart from the away form, which they have got to sort out, which is quite strange because, they've been really quite solid at home, but away from home, they've put in these kind of Watfordy performances, if I can call them that, which I thought they were getting rid of, but they haven't quite got rid of them away from home.
Yeah, spot on, Geoff. I think Charlie and I have said it many times. As Sam, who's actually in Australia at the moment, flying as we speak, we've mentioned it a lot of times about what is the difference. I know he put a massive emphasis on the home form being improved. Last season, we had a terrible run of form at home, but away from home at the minute, that's the one thing for me, Charlie, going into this fixture. The derby is the derby. Again, the whole cliche, anything can happen. But the fact of the matter is, going away from home, I would feel completely different about this fixture if it was at Vicarage Road. And it's just as simple as that for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think the fact that we're talking about the international break, I think it's come at a perfect time for Luton, just to set themselves and just kind of hearing the mood of what's going on over there. I think if they had another game like afterwards, it could have been, like Lewis said, kind of toxic. So the fact they've had that breather and maybe Rob get his ideas across, more time to get his ideas across. But yeah, like going to Kenilworth Road, it's going to be ferocious from the start. We know what it's like over there. And like the one question I had, and I've already spoke to Geoff about it, and when you guys did the podcast last time, the question I had is, how should Watford approach the game? Because Lewis, am I right in saying that from the off it's going to be volatile, it's going to be ferocious? The fans they're going to be at it from the off, aren't they?
100%. Like last time, from memory, I don't think I've ever. Like I'm only 24, so I haven't seen an atmosphere like that in a very long time. Like that was like another level. And even if you guys do go 1-0 up, I don't think the fans will accept players not winning their battles afterwards. So I still think, although it may be toxic, but it may be toxic in a good way that gets everyone more up on their feet and like get behind the group of players. Of course, I don't want to go 1-0 down anyway. But yeah, the atmosphere last time, I don't think the Watford players at the time knew what hit them. I think that was the big difference because a lot of people don't actually think we're rivals. For me, this derby is so under the radar. When you see like people on social media they're like, who's got the best derby in the EFL or whatever, we're never included. Okay, that is partly Luton's fault for playing in non-league football, but we can put that to one side and go, look, this is an underrated derby. That's how I would describe it because I don't think it's just different. For some weird reason, it is just different. So yeah, to be honest, this is poor from me, but I don't know how many players played in the last derby in this squad. But if it's not many, maybe that is actually a good thing for you guys.
We'll see. Geoff, I, just before we bring up the tactics ball, I know Charlie's warming it up as we speak. I wanted to just ask you about your experience. And I mentioned at the top of the show, you said it's uncallable, but what is your experience of this derby, of this rivalry over the years? Is there themes? Has there been patterns emerged? I know you said it's uncallable, but is there something that's run through all the games that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, listen, a derby's a derby. You guys know that. And, I understand what Lewis is saying, because I think nationally people don't quite see it. But obviously within Watford and Luton circles, it is absolutely huge. I think the last couple of, we had the 2 games during COVID, which were a bit odd because there were no fans. And it's kind of, do you count them really? It was I was there for both games, and it was a really odd experience. And again, the home sides won, and then you had those last couple last time out. But it will always be the case, and I think that's why the home teams have won in these last 4 games, because before those, then you've got to go a long way back, because obviously the non-league days, it was a long time ago before then. But they will be. Even speaking to old players, and Derek Payne, obviously we have with us and commentary, he remembers fondly those derby games. They're the ones he talks about even now. And when he's watching them, summarising, you can see if someone pulls out the tackle, he is not, because you just do not do that. And I think sometimes you wonder, do the players realise? And I think that the manager has to sort that out. And Tom Cleverley will definitely do that. And so too will Rob Edwards. That they have to, really drill into these players how much it means to the supporters. It's the 2 biggest games of the season. It's without a shadow of a doubt, and it will be fiercely contested. It will be fiercely contested, and I think that's probably why the bookmakers actually have Luton as favourites. They are at home, but they're way down the league compared to Watford, but just because of home form in those last 4 games.
Yeah, if you look at the odds currently, Luton are evens, draws 23-10, and then Watford are 29-10, so almost 3-1. So as Geoff says, Luton are the favourites going into this one. Charlie, let's get onto the tactical side of things and how both teams will set up. Should we start with the home sides?
Yeah, let's let our guest talk through how he thinks Luton are going to line up. If you go through Lewis position by position, and I'll try and find your lot and put them in there.
Well,
wow,
Lewis, I think
I'll let you go.
Yeah, but you can come in here, but a lot of this is going to depend on, because there has been talk that Luton have picked up injuries in this international break, so there are outs over McGuinness and Mengi. I don't think they're too serious, but if they are, then Luton do have problems in defence. I think the first thing to say is he going to stick with a back 4 like last time out, or is he going to go back to a back 3? And I think, knowing Rob, he would probably like to go back to that back 3, just because he knows it. It's his go-to. He's tried the 4, and he kind of said after that last game, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. Everybody wanted me to play a back 4. I played it, and we looked out of shape. Well, yeah, but then you made about 5 odd choices of sticking players in weird positions. So I think it will go with the 3 defenders, and depending if they're fit, it's likely to be Mengi on the left, McGuinness centrally, and Burke on the right-hand side as the 3 centre halves. What do you think, Lewis? Do you think he'll go back to the 3?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree. I don't think he'll go with the 4. I feel like a lot of the fans on social media still want him to go with the 4, but like as you say, if he's going to play players out of position, then we don't want to see that. So go back to the 3. I personally would go with a 3 midfield. Of course, I'm going ahead here, but yeah, that would be the back 3 for me. If of course if Mengi is fit, fingers crossed he is.
Did McGuinness cost £10 million?
Well,
I think it's with add-ons.
With all the add-ons, I think it was about 6 mil, and then with add-ons, it eventually gets to 10. He has got a lot to prove at the moment, McGuinness. Although I do feel a bit sorry for him, because he has come into a team that are struggling, but he was the one they spent big money on. And, there's a school of thought that says maybe Luton should have gone for an attacking player if you're going to spend that amount of money, if you're going to try and get back out of the Championship first time round. But yes, he was a lot of money. And unfortunately for him, he's been chucked into a side that are struggling for confidence, for belief. And I think expectations, they haven't been able to handle it. So yeah, a lot of money. So if we're going with this system, the wing backs will be Doughty on the left and Walters on the right. For some reason, he played Doughty on the right-hand side last week of midfield, which didn't work. So I'm sure he'll go back to Doughty on the left. They'll probably just try and go back to basics and go with those two in there. We'll probably get onto the tactics a bit more, but that has been an issue with those wing backs who bomb on, which then exposes those three in defence. That's why a lot of times you'll hear that Luton are left exposed 1v1 in defence with those three versus three attackers. And then Lewis is saying about playing three in the middle. I actually agree that it might be quite a good move to do that. What he tends to do is play two and then play three up top. So you could probably chuck Nakamba in central midfield with probably Kraus. And then, well, it depends on, I suppose, Morris, Lewis, doesn't it, whether Morris is fit? Because if Morris is fit, he's got to drop Adebayo, hasn't he?
Well, I would play Adebayo and Morris as the two central strikers in this. Yeah. So, because Kraus and Nakamba, from what I've personally from watching them both play, Kraus is, I think, more defensive minded. Looking at his statistics from last season in Germany, he is more of a defensive sided. I actually thought it was going to be Kraus or Nakamba, but it seems like they're going to both be playing, which is fine. But then you need to have someone who's a little bit more creative. So in front of them, I would have Baptiste, because he is available to play in this one after suffering a slight knock, and he did play a bit against Sheffield United. He's going to be the one that I think, makes everything click. But we haven't seen the best of him due to the fact that he did suffer that knock earlier on in the season. So yeah, that would be the midfield three for me, with Nakamba, Kraus being the one that kind of like moves more around the pitch, with Nakamba sitting more, and then Baptiste being that creative one in the midfield.
Yeah, I mean that's quite difficult to call that Luton team. It really is, because Chong is available again after a concussion injury, although he hasn't had a brilliant start to the season, but the manager likes him. The manager also likes Clark playing in an attacking midfield position, so he's an option as well. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. He may play three central midfielders, he may play just the two, and then just, if he's going to go for it, play the three attackers and really try and bomb on and go and hurt Watford as quickly as he possibly can. But it'll probably be something like that.
It's probably not as hard to call, Charlie, from a Watford perspective, but there are still areas which you look at and think it is up for debate. I think Geoff hit the nail on the head in his tactical preview, where I think it was 5 players each, right, Geoff, where they were nailed on starters. But yeah, even from a Watford point of view, Charlie, you look at it and you think it's going to be, we know what the formation is going to be. We know it's going to be that back 5-3, very similar actually to the Luton setup in terms of formation. But in terms of personnel, shall we run through that and go from back to front? And the big one to start with, Charlie, is whether you play Jonathan Bond or you play Daniel Batman. Now, Bond's played the last 4 games, including the Carabao Cup. Dan Batman's been out. He's come back. Well, he's back fit for this one. This is a man who has played in this fixture before, which can't be sniffed at. But is it too big of a call to bring him back in for a game at Kenilworth Road? Does it get much more difficult than that in the league?
Yeah, for me, this is a tough one. There's another position which I think is also up for debate, but I would keep Bond in. I think in the last couple of games he's played, he's been impressive. He's made some big saves, and I just think to throw Backman straight back in it, we know Dan can get a bit excited sometimes, and in this atmosphere, I don't know. So I just think with Bond it might be a bit safer in terms of less risk. And look, if anyone does make a mistake, Batman's likely to come back in as our club captain. But what do you think, Jacob? I would go with Bond.
I think it's a lose-lose for Cleverley, because if Bond has a shocker, then people say, why didn't you play Batman? And if Batman comes in and has a shocker, then people are going to say you should have stuck with Bond. I think he does cover himself, though. I know you shouldn't think like this, but I think Cleverley will be thinking, Bond's been playing the last 4 games. He's got to know the back 3 as well, pretty well, which can't be sniffed at. And it's a nice position to be in, because I think Bond surprised a few of us, actually, in terms of how reliable he's been. He hasn't really made a mistake. He's made some really good saves. He kept the score down at Preston for certain. He made some decent saves against Middlesbrough as well. So I would continue with Jonathan Bonds in goal. But then the back 3 is a little bit easier, though, Charlie. I think Pollock and Ogbonna are shoo-ins for sure. I think Ogbonna, as Geoff said, is a player who makes the other centre backs look even better because he has that classiness. He has the football IQ really of a player that's played at a high level. The left centre back one though is a slight debate. I guess I would go with Porteous, but is Morris got a shout to play at left centre back?
I think he's got a shout, and I don't think he's been horrible this season at all. I think he's good on the ball. But one thing I would have Porto in there. He's playing against Portugal tonight, so he might have the evening marking Cristiano Ronaldo. But I think for these derbies, you need someone with a bit of fire. Porto's certainly got that. Hopefully, he stays on the right side of it and not do what he did in the opening game of the Euros. I know we're going to talk about tactics, but I think the reason Porto gets the nod for me is aerially. I think he's really strong, and I think Luton are going to go back to basics, especially with Doherty. I just see that their biggest strengths are crosses, and if they are playing these two big boys up front, we're going to have to be defending balls in the box. And I think we're pretty well equipped to do that, having three really good box defenders in these three guys. It's just our build-up, which we might struggle. But I think Luton are going to be direct, and I think these three are going to be well placed to deal with that. What do you think about that, Geoff?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one with Porteous, isn't it? Because I still don't think he's got over what happened in the summer with Scotland. I really don't. I think his confidence has been really knocked by that. And it's no surprise, because we're in England. I think in Scotland, they would see that he's kind of let them down by doing what he did. I mean, that's a bit harsh because it was up against a very good Germany side. But I still think he hasn't recovered from that. However, because of his height and because of his aggression, he probably will get the nod over Morris. I'd go Morris myself, but really? I probably cleverly goes Porteous. He needs to be very careful, like one or two there, but he probably gets the nod. And, going back to Bachmann, I'd be amazed if Bachmann is fit. If he doesn't play, I'd be absolutely amazed. I think he'll start Bachmann. However, he has got history at Kenilworth Road, hasn't he? I think he took down, was it Adebayo and for the penalty years back?
Yeah,
so there is that history, but I'd be amazed if he's okay to play. I think Bachmann comes straight back into the team, as well as Bonder's done. Bachmann is first choice goalkeeper. This is a local derby, but we'll wait and see on that one. But yeah, those two positions are going to be really interesting.
Yeah, as I say, with the keeper position, it's split between Watford fans. I think you ask one or two and they'd say completely different answers. In terms of Morris, the only reason firstly, I think Porteous is a better defender, but also I do feel like Luton would target Morris. Just with that height, I think they would stick balls on him aerially, which I think Morris has done really well when he's come in this season. But certainly the one thing that he doesn't have on his side is height. And I just think physically, maybe that might be something that Luton would target. In terms of the central midfielder positions, Charlie, I think we can all agree Tom Dele-Bashiru is going to start, even with his strapped leg, which didn't look too good against Middlesbrough. Moussa Sissoko has to start as well, so I don't think that's up for debate in terms of those two. Whether there's a bit more debate, again, is the two wing-backs. Do you play Ebosele? Do you play Ryan Andrews on the right? Do you play Yasser Larouci, or do you play Ken Sema, Charlie?
Yeah, I think Sema will get the nod. I know he played for Sweden last night. I think he scored, didn't he, in their first game in the international break. And again, that shows the fact that he can get into their team. They've got some really good players at the moment, Sweden. And I think Sema, and as well as Porto on that left side, they played really well against Middlesbrough, I thought, especially Sema defending against Ben Doak defensively. And I've been quite critical of him kind of on his 1v1 defendings. But he's one of the few players who has played in this game and knows what it takes, knows what it's going to be like. I think Sema will go in at left back. Left wing back, sorry. And then on the other side, I think I would just go with Ryan Andrews. I think he's been really good this season, solid. I think he's been one of our... We're not getting him in the team. I think he's been key, especially to kind of our attacking output. You see the goal involvements that he's made. And I think he's been really well. He made the assist for our equaliser against Middlesbrough, and I think he's been really good. I think it's going to be a tough game for him, especially against Doherty, and I think Ebosele, when he started against Sunderland, was excellent. He had a really good impact off the bench for Ireland, and he might be a better defender, but I just think I think Andrews is going to play there, and I think having Eberseli to come off the bench would be my shout. Jacob, do you agree?
I 100% agree on Sema. I think he's a shoe-in. As Geoff mentioned, with Backman, a guy who's played in this game plenty of times before. He knows what the score is. You play Sema without a doubt. And Larousse gives us an option if we do need to really attack the game, where you can freshen it up and just say Larousse. Only think going forwards. In terms of the right-hand side, I'm fascinated to see this one because I think Ebersele is a better defender than Andrews. And I think Doughty's a real threat for Luton down that side going forwards, particularly. So there is part of me which thinks, do you go with Ebersele just with that defensive cover for Pollock? But then also the relationship that Pollock's built up with Andrews over the first few games is really promising. And we can't just think always defensively. We do need to attack Luton as well. If I'm honest, I lent for this one more towards Ebersele.
Let Geoff have the deciding vote.
Geoff, go for it. Oh, not Lewis, but Geoff. Geoff can do it.
I agree with Sema. I think Sema starts on the left. I think it's a 50-50 call on the right. I think he'll go with Ebersele. I think Andrews is great going forwards, but he's sometimes defensively he's a bit like Trent Alexander-Arnold as a player, where he's fantastic going forwards, but defensively sometimes doesn't do the job you want him to do. I think he gets caught out in thinking that he's an attacking wing-back, whereas actually do your defensive job as well. And I just think sometimes this season Watford have been really exposed when he's played on that right-hand side, and notably at Norwich. I know he scored against Norwich, but down that right-hand side, him and it was Porteous that side. It was him and Porteous on the right-hand side. So absolutely destroyed those two. And I just think in a game like this with Doughty on that left, they probably can't have him there for the time being. And I think that comes on probably to a point that I'd probably make later on, is I think Watford will target a second half performance where someone like Andrews might come to help out the attacker, and obviously Barr as well. But Barr might get in your 11. I don't know yet.
No, spot on, Geoff. I think that we can't underestimate the impact of the bench as well for Watford, and that's the big difference, I think, from last season, the amount of goals and contributions we've had off the bench. And then we get onto the front three. Lewis, sorry, I've kept you waiting for a little while, so we'll get back onto sort of the Luton perspective. But the front three for Watford's, Charlie, again, I mean, the number 9 position's up for debate if it's Jebison or Bio. One that we all know is going to start is Georgie Chatfordazzi. We don't even need to talk about him. We all know what he could bring. I'm going to throw it out there, Charlie and Geoff. I'd be tempted to play Tom Ince on the right.
Excuse me?
No, not having that.
I would.
Jacob, what have you been drinking?
No, honestly, I would be tempted just because, again, it gets thrown around a lot in this sort of fixture. I do think there is something to be said about positionally, especially, I know I'm thinking very defensively here, but the experience that Ince can bring to this sort of game. I think Kiembe, again, we saw the impact of him coming off the bench. I'm not against Tom Ince starting and then coming off at 60 minutes, and then you bring on your Barr, your Kiembes, your more attacking players to come on the pitch and change the course of a game. But I think particularly in the early phases, you want to make sure the shape is really good, and Tom Ince guarantees that for you, as we saw at Man City away in the Carabao Cup. I would just be tempted to maybe say to Chatfordazzi, you can wander off a little bit, you can roam, you can do what you need to do. Tom Ince can fill in the gaps and drop into a 3 in midfield, as Luton have done there as well. That's my case for it. Might be wrong, but look, I just thought, you know what, Tom Ince, there's a good argument in my opinion to say, look, start with him and then bring him off for more of the attacking players. Geoff, you're shaking your head. What do you reckon?
I think I'd be staggered if he played it. Staggered. I think Kiembe is absolutely nailed on for that position, unless he comes back and is either tired or injured from international duty. He's done a brilliant job in there. He scored goals. I think he's a bit like Ince in that. I think he is quite structured and he does keep a good balance and a good shape. And they, I was going to point to the screen there, but they have that nice box 4 in there, because even Chatfordazzi does quite a nice little job to create the box there, which Luton probably don't do quite so well. Kiembe does it really well to create the 4 in midfield. So I think it almost certainly will be Kiembe in that right position. And
then up front, Charlie, I'll leave you to do up front, because that's tough.
Yeah, I'm going for Jebbo. He's only started 2 games. I know he hasn't had the easiest start, but I think we bought him for a reason. It was hard getting him. Tom backed him. He's got kind of what we want in a player, and I think he's definitely a better player than Bio. I think there's been a few noises about kind of Bio might help us, especially out of possession, and we seem to get better results when Bio starts, even though his performances and his finishing might not be up to scratch. But look, I think Tom needs to back himself. We kind of waited for Jefferson. He was kind of one of the main transfers we got in. We got him in for a reason. He's got all the attributes. He's had another 2 weeks at London Colney. I think there's still been some bright sparks when he has played. I just think we need to continue playing him, getting used to the other players. And for me, he would lead the line. Imagine if his first goal for Watford is against Luton to kickstart his career. So, yeah, Jefferson gets the nod from me. Has anyone got a better argument than that?
I think just to throw out there, I think a Bio out of possession, as Tom Cleverley's mentioned, I know Geoff's been at the press conferences, he's mentioned a couple of times that he thinks Bio is better out of possession. Whether we think Luton are going to dominate the ball because they're at home, I'm not too sure. I'm actually fascinated to see the approach from both managers, and this is where I wanted to bring you in, Lewis. How do you think Rob Edwards will approach this from a Luton perspective? How do you think he's going to go about the game from a Luton point of view?
Well, that's a big question, especially with how the last couple of games have gone. But I think what helps is he was involved in the last derby game at home. And I think he will tell the group, we've got to do this, replicate this. Because if you replicate it at least by 80%, at least you know you stand a chance. And 80% of that performance, I think Luton fans will be very happy with. I'm not expecting it to be exactly the same, but as close to it, I think, we'll be really behind it. So, yeah, replicate the last game. And I think hopefully that game has been on repeat this week.
How do you think Clevs will approach it, Charlie?
Yeah, interesting, because when I listened back to the video you guys done and touched on Luton after the Middlesbrough game, and I think Geoff said something similar when I spoke to him about it, is how do we approach it? It seems like Watford have done quite a good job, especially at home against the better sides in Sunderland and Middlesbrough, as being a bit more pragmatic and conservative, and then wait later on to bring on Bar and other players to affect the game. But just knowing how volatile it's been at Luton recently, and I've watched back the goals they concede, it seems like every time the ball goes into their box, their defenders look allergic to it. So I don't know, is there a school of thought? And it didn't work well against Norwich at all. But Norwich and Luton at this present moment are very different teams. Is it not worth being a bit more, trying to get into them earlier and try and press forward and put them under pressure earlier? Because if they do concede that early goal and the crowd getting on top of them, it could be more beneficial for us. Because I think the more Luton are into the game, and if they can feed themselves into the game, get the crowd on side and kind of get shots off, and if we're a bit more passive, I think that could maybe suit them. Geoff, what do you think about that in terms of how cleverly we'll approach the game?
I think Clevs has played so many games like this himself throughout his career, and I think he'll know that derbys are just different. They are just different. And as much as Watford fans might want to get off to a really quick start and get that goal and try and quieten the Luton crowd, I think that's easier said than done. I think in an atmosphere like that, and where players are absolutely, at boiling point almost, it's really difficult to go and do that. And I think both managers will sense it. I think it's going to be a really cagey start to the game. I do. I think the first half is going to be really cagey because both teams are a bit edgy, particularly Luton, because of the form they're in and the position they're in. But even Watford away from home that don't seem to have quite got it right just yet. So I think there is going to be an edginess to it. And I'll be quite surprised if one team does really go for it. I mean, last time out at the Kenny, Luton were 2-0 up against Oxford. Now, bear in mind, Luton were playing in the Prem last season and Oxford were playing in League One. 2-0 up against a side like that, you think the game should be over. It's kind of, well, that's the end of it, surely. Two teams that were playing two divisions apart, not so long ago. And yet Luton still allowed them back into the game. And even when they were 2-0 up, it felt like Oxford were there was something for them there. So, it's hard to see how they approach it. I think Cleverly just has to work out with his team that their attitude has to be better than what it has been in their last couple of away performances. Forget about the Man City one because that doesn't really count. But the last two league games where at Preston, they just never looked right. I'm not quite sure why that was. The attitude wasn't there. The commitment wasn't there. Whether it was because of the three-game week or not. But the one at Norwich was more of a worry. Well, I think he just went too attacking at Norwich and thought, right, we'll try and outscore you. And, you might get away with it at home, but away from home, that's quite a big gamble to take. I'm not sure he'll do that again. I think Watford will probably be a bit more defensive-minded on Saturday.
Charlie, on the last thing I wanted to mention about the lineups, any other tactical points that you wanted to mention, any key tactical battles, or go around the room to see any individual ones that we think will be key? I know Doherty versus our right wing back was a big one mentioned.
Yeah, definitely that. And like you guys convinced me, and I would have no problem at all Ebeselli playing there. And then I just think get the ball. I know this isn't a tactical nuance, but I think get it to Chakvedadze as quick as we can. If he's kind of the cheap player who we can leave in space, and if we defend well, we've seen how well he can progress the ball. And I think Luton they'll be the ones who are going to have to press on. They're going to be the ones who are going to have to make the first move, if you like. So if we're in a good structure, and I think looking at our team in terms of Porto, Ogbonna, Pollock, if we're steady and we can get that out ball to Chakvedadze, running that kind of Luton's back line and get some support in Jefferson or Kayembe or even the fullbacks, I think that's so yeah, not the most genius tactical shout from me, but I think he's going to be key to making the difference and progressing us up the pitch. But just thinking about it now, I'm nervous.
I'm getting nervous a little bit. Oh, you know what I mean? Lewis, key player for Luton that Watford fans need to look out for?
Oh, God. Depends if they turn up or not. I think despite his start to the season and his unpredictability, I think he needs to score now or later. He's got to score soon, and that's Elijah. And I think although he's not been firing, he needs that goal. Once he gets that goal, I think it's going to kickstart his season, because he's just a player that's got no confidence at the moment. But I think if he gets a goal, I think you see like a player who's unplayable at times, because he's so unorthodox. It's unreal.
Geoff, key tactical battles that you've picked out?
Well, I think it's modern football for me. I think has changed where when teams, and it's easy to understand this because both teams play the three centre halves. But for me nowadays with modern football, those three centre halves are used to being. It normally always used to be a four back in the day. I'm quite old now, but it used to be a four. have your two centre halves who knew what they'd be up against. They'd be up against a number 9. And again, this is quite predictable, but normally a big man, little man, and the two defenders would just have those two to deal with. And then you'd have your fullbacks. Now, with the three centre-halves, what they tend to come up against is a striker, and normally it's a quick striker. We talk about Jefferson, we're talking about Adebayo or maybe Morris. And then on either side of those two, you tend to then have two nippy forwards who are lively and quick and get into those those gaps and those channels. So we are then talking. So Luton on the right-hand side sometimes have been exposed, where Burke is seeing his left winger come towards him and thinking, well, am I dealing with this guy or is my right wing back dealing with him? So if we're saying Chakvedadze is going to play down the left for Watford, which we assume, it's probably Chakvedadze will be trying to get in between the centre halves and try and catch out Burke in that position there. And then for Luton at the other end, they will probably then try and expose Porteous, who again is what I would describe as a traditional centre half. And these traditional centre halves, the game has changed. They're now, Porteous was against Sainz versus Norwich. And I mean, it wasn't even a contest. You had Sainz, who is brilliant on the ball, technically brilliant and quick, coming up in a 1v1 battle against Porteous, who's a great centre half, but he can't deal with that because his skill set isn't to deal with that. And that's where I think it has changed and why both of these two teams get exposed, because those defenders are mainly centre halves who sometimes don't deal very well with the runs into the space, particularly from the guys on the left and the right hand side. If you can see what I'm trying to say with all of that.
Honestly, the insight to get the other perspective, Charlie, I don't know about you, but I mean, it's maybe more nervous if I'm completely honest with you, but to get that insight of how both teams are going to set up, and I think what I hadn't really considered, weirdly, just because Luton have played that four at the back, that it is, as Geoff said, going to be pretty likely to be three at the back each way. I guess that the best way to wrap up today's pod, really, Charlie, is what would it mean if Watford could win at Kenilworth Road come Saturday?
Just a great day. I'm not going to say what it means for the rest of the season or talk about how we'll finish, but it'll be a great day, and the beer at the Mad Squirrel will taste just a bit better.
Lewis, the other sides of things, what would it mean for Luton? What would it mean for Rob Edwards, actually?
Well, if we lose, it'd just be a horrible year. Just simply a horrible year. Relegation and losing against your rivals. Yeah, something which I just didn't think half of that would happen. I think for me, this game goes one or two ways. We win, I hope it kickstarts our season. If we lose, then I think it's a timer on Edwards on how long he's going to manage Luton, because I feel like you earn your time in football, but if you keep this run of form going and you keep losing or you're not winning games of football, then someone's got to make a decision. But right now the board are behind him, so I just hope he can sort it out. And that's what the fans were singing after Sheffield United. It was sort it out.
Geoff, just before we get predictions, and this is not from what you know, but if just your gut, if Watford did beat Luton at the weekend, do you think that? Not do you think? 'Cause that's a hard question to say, but could that be the end for Edwards at Luton?
Wouldn't be after the game. They wouldn't do that. Gary Sweet wouldn't do that because of the pride in it. They wouldn't allow Watford the satisfaction of sacking the manager after that game. Whether it happened later on in the season, if form carried on, then perhaps, and then that could be a factor as a result. But they wouldn't do it after that. I think even if they lost 5 or 6-0, they wouldn't do it, just because they wouldn't allow that to be the case, that Watford could then gloat that they've got Edwards sacked. Lewis has made a point. They have backed him, and recently as well, saying we don't make knee-jerk reactions like other clubs. And again, there's that little bit coming in.
Just a little one.
Yeah, yeah. But the issue that Luton have is that they've got really difficult games coming up. They've got Sunderland after Watford, then they've got Coventry, and then they've got another couple of hard ones. If they don't get these, if these results don't start coming, Luton could be in the relegation zone. This is a side that were in the Premier League last season, and the other two that were alongside them are up in the top three. And that's why the expectation is there, and they haven't been able to deal with it. So, yeah, I mean, it's really weird because Rob Edwards is under pressure, and I still think Telman Cleverley's under a little bit of pressure. As stupid as that sounds, they're sixth in the table. I still think just because of the way Watford is run, they expect the Hornets to do really well. And with these away performances, I think that the hierarchy have looked at it and thought, that didn't look that right. And that seems really absolutely crazy to me. But I think that is there as well. So we've got these two teams coming into it, both a little bit under pressure, the managers, which seems daft.
Prediction time. Honestly, the nerves are building as we do this podcast. We've managed to make it to the end of it. Charlie, prediction time. I'm not going to say goal scorers, but prediction. What is going to be the score come Kenilworth Road at 2:30 on Saturday?
3-3.
Lewis,
if we turn up, I can see us winning, like a similar 2-0 victory. That would be nice. If we carry on the way we're doing, and I actually think if you guys come at us, because we don't look good. I think every team that's come to Luton that comes at us, we just don't look like we can get a victory. We look like we're always going to concede. If you do that against us, I honestly think you could walk away with a 3-0 win, and that really hurts to say that.
I'm going 1-0. Matty Pollock set piece, 60, 70th minute. Geoff?
I'm going to have to be diplomatic here. Probably.
What a surprise.
Although I can see it being a draw, just with the form of both teams, Watford away from home and Luton, how they've started. I think the odds, I'm surprised how big odds Watford are. having watched Luton in the last month or so. There have been big concerns for me with Luton. But then I say that, and I've watched Watford away from home, and Norwich was a case in point where I remember leaving the ground thinking, I'm not quite sure what he's trying to do there, or he's got his tactics really wrong. And I think we all left that game thinking Cleverley's almost learning on the job, which is okay. He's a young manager. He will learn. He will make mistakes, like all managers do. All top coaches do. Pep Guardiola makes mistakes. You know, it's the same with the Luton boss as well. It's just in these days, there's people like us who talk about it, and it all gets ramped up, doesn't it? So yeah, I think it's a really difficult call. I'm just going to have to go with the draw. I think it's going to be cagey, like I said earlier. I think it'll be cagey. Neither team will want to lose. I can see a 1-1.
See a 1-1. We're going to run a mini Twitter competition. We've got a couple of Watford posters. So if you want to put your prediction in the comment section below, if you get it right, we'll pick out a few names at random to send one over. Lewis, Geoff, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Lewis, I would wish you the best of luck for Saturday, but you know I can't do that. But really do appreciate your time this afternoon, mate. I know I know you're a busy man, so top man for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
Legend. And Geoff, the insight was fascinating. The diplomatic prediction was perfect. And hopefully we'll get you on soon, mate.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh, and a beer at the Squirrel sounds good as well, Charlie. So
let's do it. Yeah. It's
I don't think I'm allowed in there.
Lewis, you're not allowed in WD18, mate.
Charlie, what a pleasure. As we said at the top of the show with our Mad Squirrel announcement, post-match pint on Saturday. Come down, win, draw or lose, hopefully after a Watford win. It's Luton versus Watford at Kenilworth Road this Saturday, 12:30 kickoff. We'll see you there. Myself and Charlie will be there. So if you do see us, say hello. And have a great one. Take care and up the audits. You want.